people are always wanting to know what's the difference between porque and porque. Porque and porque. Well, for starters, you want to look at this one. There is an accent above the E. So the very nature of accent above the E means you're going to put more emphasis on it. So it's pronounced porque. Porque. Anytime you see an accent over a letter, that means you put more emphasis on it. Whereas this one over here, it's just porque. There is no accent. So you can just go ahead and just say regularly porque. But this is porque. Now, the difference between these two, although they look relatively similar, they're really not. They actually mean the opposite. This is one word. This is two words. This is what you can consider the question, and that is the answer. Hola, Robin the Comeback Coach. Hola, Mastermind Vibes. So the way that we can, how can we say this? We can say that this is the question. And this is the answer. So two words that look similar, but they are different. So porque is a question. That's always going to be at the front of a sentence asking a question. And then the way you answer it is porque. Okay, so let's do an example. We could say, for example, we could say, ¿por qué estudias español? So that could be a question, but then the answer, we have to answer it using por qué. Por qué means because. And actually, let me put that in here. So, por qué means because. And then por qué is why. So whenever you see the word por qué, it's why. But whenever you see por qué, it's because. So let's do an example. So we know that por qué estudias español. So this question is, why do you study Spanish? You know, why are you even studying Spanish? And so we could answer that by saying, porque. We could say something like, something easy. We can say, porque me gusta. Porque me gusta. And just right there, hola, Empress, estoy muy bien, gracias, ¿y tú? So that right there, you successfully used both words, both words, but they mean different things. So this sentence reads, why do you study Spanish? This is because I like it. Now, por qué, remember, por qué with the accent, it's two words, and it is a question word. It means why. Por qué, one word, means because, and it's the answer. It's the natural follow-up to this word. So if you have a question beginning with por qué, the natural answer is going to end or begin with por qué. Let's do another example. We'll do same question. ¿Por qué estudias español? We could say something like, ¿por qué quiero viajar? Because I want to travel. Because I want to travel. And I think that's a good reason for wanting to know Spanish, because I think you'd have a lot more fun being in a Latino country if you know the actual language. It would make things a lot easier for you. So that's an example of how por qué works at the beginning as a question. And then por qué is the natural answer, meaning because. So we're literally looking at why versus because. So if you ask somebody a why, then you would answer with because, just like in English. You could say, oh, okay, why are you going to the store? Oh, because I need some groceries. So exactly. All right. So let's do another example. We'll do another question. It's like a set. You don't really get one without the other. If somebody poses a question saying por qué, the natural way to answer would be por qué. A question and its natural answer. Why and because. So let's do another example. And you don't want to get it mixed up because although they sound similar, they're written differently. Porque, meaning why, is 2 words. But porque is 1 word. And it does not have an accent over the E or any accent at all, really. Porque llegaste tarde. So this one is, okay, ¿por qué llegaste tarde? Like, why did you arrive late? And you could say something like, we could say, ¿por qué? Meaning because, which means we're about to give a reason here. ¿Por qué había tráfico? You know, basically saying there was traffic. You know, traffic was bad, there was traffic, any of those variations. That's why you would say that. So you see there's a natural question with por qué, and the way you respond to that is with saying por qué. They look similar, but they are said differently. The accent over here makes you know it's an emphasis. So you're emphasizing que, so por qué versus por qué. This is a question that is an answer. And also, if you'll notice up here, it's 2 separate words. There's a space between those. And this is only 1 word. So that's how you would differentiate the 2. Okay, let's do another example. We're going to do one more example. We're going to use a slightly different one than we did earlier. Okay, so ¿por qué estudias español? Now, same question, but there are many different answers we can use. So an answer to that would be, ¿por qué mi familia habla español? All right, so the question here is, okay, why are you studying Spanish? The answer, porque mi familia habla español. Because my family speaks Spanish. So see? And that's the whole point of this exercise, is to get you to see that the question and the answer, although they look a little similar, they are going to be different, because porque is literally meaning why, and porque, 1 word, means because. And anytime you have a question, you have to have an answer. And you have a why, you have to have a because. Anytime, just think about it in English. When someone asks you why, then the natural response is because. And that's the same thing. Some guy says, I am learning because I met a girl in Mexico. Oh, that's so good. Okay. Does she know any English, or is she all Spanish? Is she like all only know Spanish? That's so cool. And that's a good incentive, because Spanish, when you learn, that helps you build relationships too, and build connections with people who may or may not know English. So if they don't know English, well, hey, you can talk to them in Spanish then. Now we're gonna do an exercise here. I want to see who's been paying attention here. Hables inglés. Oh, okay. So you're saying she speaks English. Now, let me correct you there, some guy. What you want to say is habla inglés. Okay? Because what you said was hables inglés, but that's not correct. Hables inglés is not correct. That's a subjunctive form of saying you speak English in the subjunctive form. But if you're trying to say she speaks English, then it is habla inglés. That's how you say she speaks English. Okay. Yes, you're right. Exactly. Yes, we did learn this today, Robin, the comeback coach. Now I have a quick quiz for you all. I want to see if you all can see what I see. Let's say I'm asking somebody the question, ¿Por qué estudias español? ¿Por qué estudias español? Is this correct? Is this the correct way we say that? Exactly, Eve. Yeah, exactly, Love Quay. Exactly. No, it's not correct. It's not correct. It's not correct. Because remember what we saw earlier, if we're asking question, the hint is these question marks. The hint is these question marks here. So if we know it's a question, what's our question here? It's porque in 2 words with an accent. So that means we're going to cross this out because that's not the right form. This says because. But if we're trying to ask a question here, then it needs to be porque. It needs to be porque. And that's the question. All right, that is the actual question word here. Okay. Yeah, you're correct, Davex. Porque is because. And exactly. So porque doesn't belong in a question here because that's like saying because you study Spanish, and that doesn't sound right because it does not belong at the beginning as a question. But you know what does belong? Porque. Porque is our question, and it means why. So we're trying to say, why do you study Spanish? Okay. So that's so good job, you guys. You got that one correct. You got that one correct.